Plant Industry, Director Gerald Glenn Panganiban. From the National Beef Inspection Service, Deputy Director Roberto Umali. From the Bureau of Animal Industry, we have Director Samia Sevilla. And from the Philippine Rice Research Institute, we have Dr. John De Leon. From NFA, Administrator Larry Lacson himself. So we have a lot from the DA family, sir. From the DTI, we have Director Cheryl Carbonell and Miss Rosita Haleco. From PSA, we have Miss Rachel Laksa. From the Department of Finance, we have Director Jolly La Rosa. From the BIR, we have Attorney Edgar Alan Reyes and Director Faith Faro Chilen Umandap. From the Bureau of Customs, we have Assistant Commissioner Vicente Philip Maronilla. From DSWD, we have Director Melvin Dairit. From FNRI, Dr. Marie Bugas. From Department of Agrarian Reform, Yusek Rowena Nina Taduran. From MWSS, Admin Leonor Cleofas. From the Department of Justice, OIC Director Attorney Cesar Jose Francisco. From the Philippine Competition Commission, Director Christian Loren de los Santos and Executive Director Kenneth Tanate, PhD himself. From NBI, we have Head Agent Winmar Louis de Ramos. From PNP, Police Colonel Pablito Asmod Jr. From the Philippine Coast Guard, Lieutenant Commander Sonny Sarmiento. From ULAP, we have Mr. Ren Untalan. From AMLA, we have Deputy Director Attorney Adrian Arpon. Also from AMLC, Deputy Director Attorney Erano Domale. From Malusog at Matalinong Batang Coalition, we have Mr. Lionel Tanangco. From World Food Program, we have Mr. Regis Chapman. Alianza Agricultura, Dr. Ernesto Ordonez. Federation of Free Farmers Cooperative, we have Mr. Raul Montemayor. From the Philippine Swine Industry Foundation, Dr. Arnulfo Frontuna. From Meat Importers Traders Association, Mr. Jesus Chan. From Philippine Association of Broilers Integrators, Ms. Rita Palabiab. From United Broiler Raisers Association, Attorney Elias Jose Insyong. For the rice importers, we have Attorney Irene Chu of River Valley Distribution. And we have Ms. Corazon Barnuevo of Soda Trade Corporation and Mr. G.V. David of G4 Rice Mill Corporation. Your Honors, we also, for our members, we also have Representative Ana Victoria Veloso Tuason, sir. Thank you.
Thank you very much. For our common enlightenment or common edification, the committee would just allow 3 short presentations para we can contextualize why these hearings are very important. So may I call now on Lionel, who is advising the SWD with respect to Malusog at Matalinong Bata Coalition. Lionel, please.
Chairman, Mr. Chairman,
Yes.
just a point of clarification before we proceed to the presentation. Yesterday, this representation moved to issue a show cause order for Mr. Stewart Santiago. What's the status of that show cause order? Because yesterday he was represented by his lawyer, and we found out that Stewart Santiago owns 2 accredited importations.
Comsec.
Yes, sir. It has been received by the LSB, sir. Then,
Received by the LSB,
yes, sir.
so no reply yet.
Sir, we would have to coordinate with the LSB if they were able to serve.
But the lawyer of Mr. Stewart Santiago is present yesterday. Supposedly you delivered the show cause order to the lawyer. Is the lawyer present today? Lawyer Stewart Santiago? Oh, wala din.
Sir, I was informed po that the representative, not the lawyer, went to the clinic with Miss Telma Angeles, because Miss Telma Angeles, one of the resource persons was sick yesterday and she was confined, sir.
The lawyer? What's the business of the lawyer?
Yes, sir. Yes, sir. They came to Manila together, sir, and they requested because the Miss Thelma Angeles was confined po. But
Oh, I'm talking about, I'm talking about Stewart Santiago.
yes, sir. We are talking about Mr. Carl Benz Pandarawan, sir, who was representing NANS 2 and Davao Solar Best Corporation yesterday.
Yes, so,
Opo.
is he present today?
Yes, when we were about to serve it, they left na, sir, for the hospital. But we are in contact with them, and we
Eh,
will.
why? What's the business of that lawyer to the other resource person that was brought to the hospital? And, Mr. Chairman, pwede lang ba na umalis yung mga resource person without being excused by the chairman of this committee?
We actually asked them for a special power of attorney, and we will try to produce that.
No, but the special power attorney was
the lawyer.
also submitted by that lawyer, but it was not a proper and legal excuse for the Stewart Santiago not to be present in our hearing. That will be a bad precedent, as I've said yesterday, Mr. Chairman. That will be a bad precedent if we allow lawyers or counsel to represent their clients without
we will try to
valid excuse. And Mr. Chairman, if that show cause order was properly communicated and received by the resource person or any of his representative, without, Mr. Chairman, without any reply to that show cause order, I move to issue a subpoena for Stewart Santiago, Mr. Chairman, unless communication from the COMSEC was not properly delivered and accepted or received.
May I beg the indulgence of my co-chair? We serve it late, unfortunately, because we have too many ministerial matters to attend to. So the representative received the paper only at 6 p.m. By that time, they have already left for the hospital. So if you could at least give us this day so we could produce a more substantial compliance with the show cause order by the if you can just at least allow us a little allowance.
Okay, so Mr. Chairman,
Give us today.
the show cause order for Mr. Stewart Santiago still stands.
Yes, because they left at 6 p.m.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you. And we will deal with your motion once it is seconded at a certain point. Lionel, please go straight. How many slides?
Including transitions, 10, sir. I'll do it
Please.
faster.
Okay, please
Yes, sir.
go straight. After that is Mr. Reyes Chapman of the World Food Program. Then after that, the PCC. PCC, how many slides?
3 slides.
3 slides. World Food Program, how many slides? 6 slides. Okay. So we don't, because we don't want to waste the time of we seldom get the Honorable Secretary. He has spent a lot of time already since 8 a.m. with us. So, Lionel, proceed.
Good morning, Honorable Chairpersons and members of the Super Committee. I'm Lionel po of the MMB Coalition. We're a group of economists, lawyers fighting for nutrition. Thank you once again for the honor of the invite. Next slide, please. 2 weeks ago, we presented the case for the need for a diverse diet. As an example, we showed that our people consume much less protein and other nutritious food necessary for brain and body development, leading to the prevalence of stunting and their lifelong irreversible effects. The ongoing discussions on rice are very important as it is our staple, and the high prices of rice is most likely crowding out spending on nutritious food. Today po, we'd like to contribute by sharing some policy insights on what can be done for the other food types. What I've personally learned from monitoring the committee's hearings is that someone has to be responsible for keeping food prices low and stable, and also that solutions have to be sustainable and market-oriented. We'd like to offer some ideas po for the short, medium, and long term. Next slide, please. Over the short term, we support the following interventions championed by the President himself to help the most vulnerable populations afford diverse food amid high prices. So the first is the first 1,000 days grant under the 4Ps announced by the President in the SONA this year. It's a targeted grant for pregnant lactating women because they need more food. Second is the adjustment of other 4Ps grants and the indexation of these grants to inflation. Another short-term effort that can be pursued since cumulative inflation has diminished the purchasing power of the grants by 19% from 2019, that's the passage of the 4Ps law, up to this year. So 4/5 na lang po yung kaya nalang bilhin with the same grant amounts. Finally, yung Walang Gutom food stamp program po as presented by Asek Balder of the DSWD 2 weeks ago. Next slide, please. Over the medium term, we propose a strategic shift toward a nutrition-sensitive agriculture strategy, similar to other countries like Ethiopia. Mr. Chair, you mentioned po before Ethiopia, they're at a higher stunting rate than ourselves at 37%, but they've actually managed to reduce it already by 20 percentage points over the past 25 years, whereas tayo 7 percentage points lang po yung binaba. Anyways, a nutrition-sensitive agriculture strategy does not mean po self-sufficiency or that we need to produce everything on our own. And beyond home and community gardens or livestock poultry raising, we propose a systematic, nutrition-first, market-oriented, national and local approach to agriculture policy, planning, budgeting, and government support. We propose po, number one, beginning with the components of a healthy diet, such as through yung Pinggang Pinoy po. Next slide. The DOST-FNRI produced the Pinggang Pinoy, which is a very practical guide to what a person ought to consume as a healthy diet. They have recommendations and options by age and culturally sensitive as well. Flashed on the screen is, for example, the guidance for pregnant and lactating women. And the recommendation po is for our agriculture planning to center on the needs of the people first. Next slide po. Second, monitor the price and availability data of these components, so iba-iba pong sangkap, at the national, province, and if even possible, municipal level, with the objective of understanding what drives high prices. A lot of thinking has been focused on drivers of prices on the national scale, but there's a lot that can also be done on the subnational level. The PSA's price monitoring data is a good start po. They have provincial price data, which I've mapped into an interactive heat map. Next slide, please. So this is PSA data. Nilatag ko lang po into a map. And it's interactive po through the links flashed. And you'll see po on the screen the PSA's provincial prices, for example, of Kasim, that's the one on the left, and Tilapia on the right. And it's like a heat map po with the darker colors representing higher prices. So the point of this illustration is to show po na iba-iba po ang cost drivers of different food types. And even within the Philippines, iba-iba rin po yung range of, malaki rin po yung range of prices. Iba-iba po ang comparative advantages ng iba-ibang lugar, iba rin po ang logistics costs, etc. And there's a lot of wiggle room aside from national policy to lower these costs. Next slide po. The next step po, number 3, is to study the drivers of high costs for and reasons for inaccessibility of food items. So for example po, based on the data, we'll see na sa Batanes po mataas po yung food prices across the board, of course, dahil po sa logistics costs, etc. So studying po the reasons, the drivers of the costs, the government can assess, is it a logistics issue, is it a storage issue, or others po. Number 4, to plan, budget, and implement interventions accordingly. So based on the local agriculture practices, the agroclimatic conditions, dietary preferences, and the availability of outside sources as well. Next slide po. When considering interventions po, our proposal is to analyze questions such as, for example, to reduce the price of protein sources and ensure availability, what's the most effective way? And specifically, parang to the detail of in this market, in this municipality, how do we drive down the prices in a sustainable and market-oriented way? And this may involve, for example, market access such as trade facilitation or logistics. Halimbawa po, yung mga karatig bayan o probinsya po na ang presyo rito ng bagay na ito mataas, sa kabila hindi naman po. Bakit kaya? Ano pong pwedeng gawin? No? Sa logistics side, for example, the creation of new local industries can be considered kung kailangan po at kung financially feasible. And then, pwede pong strategic yung planning ng mga bagay tulad ng post-harvest facilities, cold storage, price information systems if necessary, etc. And marami pong house bills on these things. And yun, parang the point being po that interventions will be different depending on the causes of the high prices. On the second to the last bullet point po, this may require some shifting away from more crop-based planning, budgeting, and programming toward more people-centered planning, budgeting, and programming. Dahil nga po dun sa insight na where government support is, farmers will stay in those industries po kasi nandun po yung government support. And with regard to what roles, on the last bullet point, with regard to what roles the national, regional, provincial, and city or municipal government will play, our position po is it depends on who can best do what role. And I honestly don't have a ready answer yet po. Next slide. Finally, last slide na po. Over the long term, raising incomes through inclusive economic development is still key. What we see po on the graph is as people's incomes go up, they also tend to consume a more diverse diet. In the graph, makikita nyo po na going to the right, so habang increasing income deciles, nababawasan po yung consumption of carbohydrates in favor of a more balanced diet. So long-term strategy-wise, economic development is still key. Next slide. Once again, thank you very much po to the Super Committee for inviting us, and we'd be happy to continue supporting this effort, Mr. Chair.
Thank you. Now may call on the World Food Program.
Mr. Chairman, honorable representatives, honorable guests, distinguished speakers, ladies and gentlemen, magandang umaga po. I'm not sure if the presentation can be put up, but in the meantime, thank you for allowing me the opportunity to address this important super committee today. The United Nations World Food Program works closely with several departments, particularly those providing social support such as DSWD and DepEd. While much of the focus over the course of yesterday was related to the cost of rice for Filipino consumers, there are other important factors related to food security and nutrition in the country. And today I'll discuss one of those, which is school meals. We've also submitted additional details to the committee for consideration on this topic, but the presentation will highlight the importance of school meals in the Philippines and how it can be strengthened to see greater food security, nutrition, economic benefits for the population. Great. And go to the next slide, please, Bo. Okay, so this slide just gives a brief overview of what we'll touch on today. So I'll talk about the first 8,000 days, school meals in the Philippines, some potentials for school-based feeding programs, and suggested amendments to RA 11037. Next, Bo. So we all hear about the importance of the first 1,000 days, and Lionel just mentioned that. But there's a need to take more of a life cycle approach as well. Next slide, please. So a need to take a more life cycle approach to human capital development. Thus, the emphasis here on the first 8,000 days. Brain development continues to take place well beyond 2 years or even the first 5 years. And the government's series of feeding programs over this period are a reflection of that importance. Next slide.
8,000.
So continuing to finance health and nutrition of school children and adolescents through schools is key. So a few of the key points highlighted here, again, in early childhood, nutritional and social environments help shape brain development. We know in the Philippines, 91% of children at the end of primary school do not reach the minimum proficiency level in reading, partially due to food insecurity or food deprivation. And school meals really can be a source of improving nutrition and educational outcomes at the same time and can benefit the local economy. I'll touch base on this last point later, but there's, for every dollar invested, school meals can give $9 in return. Now that figure can change depending on a number of dynamics, and I'll touch base on 2 studies that are taking place or getting ready to take place here in the Philippines, one on value for money and one in evaluation of the Philippines' flagship dietary supplementation programs. Next, please. So the Philippines has a lot to showcase regionally and globally with its school feeding program. We had representatives from DepEd, from NADA, at a ASEAN Regional School Feeding Coalition meeting just a couple of weeks ago, and the DepEd was able to showcase quite a lot of the work that's happening. So, the importance that the Philippines government places on access to food and nutrition for children is commendable. And there's a lot of unique aspects where I think the world can learn from the Philippines example on school meals. However, there are other areas that could be strengthened and enhanced. For example, Philippines is globally the only country in the world that targets school children based on undernutrition. So looking at severely wasted children. Now, there are downsides to that, and it leads to social stigma. So again, children receiving school meals may feel that they are perceived differently than other children in the school. And there's also inefficiencies. You're not gaining from the economies of scale that school feeding could potentially offer. Next slide, please. So this is really the crux of it. Republic Act 11037 adopts a cycle menu composed of hot meals, including fortified food with central kitchens as the preferred model. However, processed food and take-home rations are more widely practiced. Some items are mandatory for fortification under RA 8967, notably rice, but that remains unfortified in most of the SBFP meals, the school-based feeding program meals. Community-based models of procurement, the National Feeding Program Law envisions sourcing food from local farmers. So again, the school meals program can serve as an important engagement with smallholder farmers and injecting the procurement power and those resources back into communities. However, again, schools rely on large formal enterprises, which also often use non-local ingredients. And there's a low number of children per school, so this policy of individual targeting prevents local procurement at scale. So again, by targeting only children that are severely malnourished, you're unable to obtain those economies of scale. Next slide, please. So here are some of the recommendations on amendments to RA 11037 that the United Nations World Food Program is advocating for. So first, in lieu of individual targeting, the school-based feeding program should adopt a geographic targeting and reach all children in public primary schools in selected areas. Now, ideally, every child in the Philippines should receive a school meal. However, we know that financial constraints make that a challenge. So in an interim, the advocacy would be to at least do blanket or universal school feeding within geographically targeted schools. Now, this would address a number of factors, particularly in food insecure areas. Children coming to school hungry and inattentive would be addressed. The stigma of being singled out as a undernourished child would be eliminated, and the high operational costs per meal could be significantly reduced. Targeting could be aligned with the PMNP, the World Bank Multi-Sectoral Nutrition Project municipalities, and this would help to ensure convergence with the first 1,000 days approach. So again, taking that life cycle approach. And then WFP, DepEd, and the MBHTE and BARM are pilot testing a new approach in selected schools for evidence generation. We refer to this as homegrown school feeding. Now, that does not mean that parents are producing and sending their kids with production to school. It entails engaging smallholder farmers in the vicinity of the school to be the providers of the commodities in schools. So with these pilot schools, what we're seeing is WFP is providing some level of contribution. The LGUs are also doing most of the procurement of the fruits, vegetables, and proteins. So ensuring that we're getting the grow, go, and glow that Lionel mentioned. And so this is potentially a very interesting model for the Philippines, again, injecting those procurement resources of DepEd back into local farmers. Now, I mentioned that I would touch base on those two studies. So, Mr. Chairman, if you allow me one more moment, just to mention the value for money study that's being undertaken right now is a sort of light touch value for money study. So we know that global evidence shows that completing primary education while benefiting from a school feeding program ensures improved nutrition and supports academic achievements as well. So this study that's ongoing is a collaboration between the School Meals Coalition Research Consortium, which is a global body, Harvard University, the World Food Program, and DepEd, and it aims to evaluate the costs, benefits, and economic returns of the school-based feeding program. And this is to provide evidence-based insights to guide enhancements in the school feeding policy and program implementation. As I mentioned before, global evidence shows that school meals generally demonstrate an important return on the investment, and that can range from every $1 generating $7 up to $35. Again, that depends on the context, but school meals is a high-impact investment that can yield significant returns across education, health, and economic sectors. On education, school meals improve attendance, increase retention, reduce dropout rates, and support academic performance by addressing short-term hunger. In many of the schools where kids go home for their lunches and are expected to come back, we know that many of those children do not return. So providing those school meals at the school also helps ensure continuity throughout the day. For health, the school-based feeding program is associated with a 38% reduction in anemia. So we talk a lot about stunting, and one other important aspect is micronutrient deficiencies. So it can help to improve overall health and reduce eventually healthcare costs down the road. And there's long-term benefits. School meals enhance job prospects and increase future wages. 10.5% increase in wage for each additional year of education around the world. This contributes to a more resilient and productive society. So again, the advocacy around amending RA 11037 is key. Right now, that legislation prevents certain changes to the school meals program here in the Philippines. We should be looking to increase the feeding days from 120 to the full school year, ensuring continuity and educational and nutrition benefits for learners. Again, expand the coverage of the National Feeding Program beyond undernourished children and provide more of a universal approach in targeted schools. And again, we can start with a geographic targeting and adopting homegrown school feeding models to increase the use of locally sourced food, improve diet. We also know that shorter supply chains means more nutritious products on the plates of school kids. So again, that importance with a more circular economy approach. Finally, WFP is also collaborating with NADA on dietary supplementation programs evaluation. So this will begin shortly, and this will review and enhance national dietary supplementary programs. The evaluation aims to harmonize government-supported feeding programs, including Tutok Kainan, if I pronounce that correctly, the supplementary feeding program, and the school-based feeding program. The evaluation aims to improve the efficiency, sustainability, and alignment with national priorities. And this evaluation aligns with the National Education and Nutritional Agenda to advance evidence-based policy reforms. And I think what's important is this collaboration between NADA and the World Food Program also emphasizes a whole of government approach to strengthen resilience in the country and ensure that programs deliver impactful results for communities. So I think the bottom line, the school-based meals program has huge potential. There are opportunities to really tap into those potentials. It's important that we look at, again, a life cycle approach over adolescence to address some of the nutritional and food security problems and challenges in the country. But I would look at that investment as something that can be enhanced for much greater returns. And you have the support of the World Food Program and a number of international partners through what's called the School Meals Coalition, which is a growing global entity of influence with its secretariat managed by the World Food Program's headquarters based in Rome. And we've been helped to bring quite a lot of support to DepEd and to the school feeding discussion here in the Philippines. Thank you very much.
Thank you. May I now call on the Philippine Competition Commission. Gawin, habang wala si Stella.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Next slide, please. So, Mr. Chair, based on the investigation of the PCC on rice, this is the supply chain that they studied. And so we have this palay and milled rice. So from the farmers can sell to NFA. This is pre-RTL. So from farmers, they sell it to NFA, trader millers and traders, and even millers only. And then this, the NFA, which we know before, can sell it to the wholesaler and directly to the consumer. And then we have the importers that sells directly to wholesalers and wholesalers to retailers, and millers to wholesalers, retailers, and consumers. Now on, next slide, please. Next slide, please. Okay, so the only difference from the previous slide, Mr. Chair, is that the function of NFA. So on February 14, 2019, the rice tariffication law was approved, and these transformed the NFA from trading and regulatory agency to a buffer stock agency. The role of NFA was refocused on the acquisition, maintenance, and distribution of rice buffer stock. The law stipulates that the NFA shall maintain an optimal level of national rice inventory to be sourced solely from local farmers and to distribute rice during emergency or calamity situations and sustain the disaster relief program of the government during natural or man-made calamities. So the areas of concern, previous slide, please. Previous slide. Previous slide, please. Previous. So the areas of concern here, the anti-competitive conduct is more probable among vertically integrated entities operating in one or more of supply chain. For example, an entity that can be an importer or wholesaler, or even importer, wholesaler, and retailer. And worse, if they are traders, importers, wholesalers, or retailers. So such vertically integrated entities are more likely to have the capital, connection, and administrative expertise necessary to facilitate large-scaling aggregation, processing, and importance of rice. So we have there the trade millers have been, during the investigation of enforcement office being led by our director, Christian here, have been noted to have strong connection to many scattered farmers involved in rice production. So they are known to facilitate aggregation of large amount of paddy in exchange for facilitating the planting of crop, no, through cash and other inputs of farming. So, kumbaga sila nagbibigay muna ng parang puhunan para dun sa mga farmers. And during the harvest time, nakukuha nila yung mga produce. So, Mr. Chair, dito po ngayon ang possible price manipulation dito sa halimbawa importers or wholesalers or dito sa red box and then yellow box. So, kung may tanong po kayo mamaya po, yung si Director Christian po pwedeng sumagot sa detalye po ng investigation. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Thank you. At this point, it is the honor of the chair to recognize for his preliminary statements from our Honorable Secretary of Agriculture, Secretary Kiko Lauren. You recognize, sir.
Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Okay yung Tagalog mo. Mas maganda.
Sa mga miyembro ng Murang Pagkain Super Committee ng House of Representatives, magandang umaga po. Tanggapin ko ang tungkulin bilang kalihim ng Department of Agriculture mula kay Pangulong Ferdinand Bongbong Marcos Jr. Malinaw ang kanyang utos, dagdagan ng ani mula sa sakahan at pagkain, siguraduhin sapat ang pagkain at itaas ang kita ng mga magsasaka, mangingisda at iba pang mga sektor sa agrikultura. Kapag mataas ang produksyon, dapat bumaba ang presyo ng pagkain, lalo na ang bigas. Pero may mga limitasyon ang ating kakayahan sa DA. Dati may kapangyarihan ang National Food Authority na magbenta ng bigas sa mas mababang halaga. Naalis ito nung ipasa ang Rice Tariffication Law noong 2019. Humiling kaming maibalik ito at ang kapangyarihan na ito sa NFA. Pero kahit ito ay suportado ng Kongreso, hindi ito pumasa. May ilang matindi ang pagtutol sa panukalang ito. Dahil dito, nawala na sa amin ang misyon ng pag-stabilize ng presyo ng bigas at mais at iba pang bigas at mais. Sa halip na makatulong ang NFA sa pamamagitan ng timely intervention para pagpababa ng presyo ng bigas, ay nagiba ang building o foundation ng NFA. Instead sana na baguhin lang ang administrasyon kung may palpak man na o meron mang korupsyon na nakita at i-modify ang policies, ang nangyari ay nagiba ang building ang foundation ng NFA. Nawala ang kapangyarihan ng NFA na mag-intervene sa merkado tulad ng dati. Kasabay nito, nawala din ang kapangyarihan ng DA na kontrolin at stabilize ang presyo ng bigas. Kung may babalik sana ang kapangyarihan nito ng NFA at authority ng DA, with the authority ng DA Secretary, mas magiging epektibo ang DA sa pagsupil sa pang-aabuso ng mga rice traders at mas maiimpluwensyahan natin ang presyo ng bigas. Sa ngayon, ang nangyayari sa amin ay para kaming lumalaban ng isang kamay namin ay nakatali sa likod. Sa ngayon, ginagamit din namin ang kadiwa ng Pangulo at Food Terminals Incorporated para magbenta ng murang bigas. Dinadala namin ang kadiwa kiosk sa palengke at train stations tag-umpisa ito noong nakaraang linggo. Pero mabilis pa rin maubos ang supply. Pinakikita nito na ang kailangan ng mas malakas na intervention para tulungan ang karaniwang mamimili. Sa ilalim ng Rice for All program, nagbebenta kami ng well-milled rice sa halagang 40 pesos kada kilo. Hindi po to subsidized. May kita po tayo na ang FTI na 2 piso bawat kilo para hindi malugi ang programa. Para sa mga retailers, mas kaya nilang magbenta dapat ng 42 to 43 pesos per kilo. Dahil may mas mataas na silang gastos, naintindihan namin ito. Sa pagbababa naman ng taripa ng bigas, hindi sang-ayon noong umpisa ang DA. Ang kita mula sa taripa ay magagamit sana para sa Rice Competitive Enhancement Fund. Pero ito naman ay nagawan naman ng paraan at may garantiya ang ating gobyerno na yung 30 billion every year ay may bibigayan base sa bagong RTL natin. At buti na lang at malawak ang pananaw na din ng ating Pangulo at alam niya na mas marami ang mahihirapan kung mataas ang presyo ng bigas. Consumer din ang ating mga magsasaka at mga mangingisda. Kung hindi po ibinaba ni Pangulong Bongbong Marcos ang taripa mula 15%, taripa sa 15% mula sa 35%, mas mataas pa sana ang presyo ng bigas ngayon. Kahit bumaba ang global price sandali, bumagsak naman ang halaga ng peso laban sa dolyar. Nag-offset ito ng pagbaba ng international prices. Ngunit ngayon, ang nabanggit ko kanina sa ating executive session, tumaas na ulit din ang dollar price ng bigas galing sa Vietnam. Kaya isang magiging problema din ng konti ngayon yan. Sa ngayon, pinapangako ng Department of Agriculture sa utos ng Pangulo na gagawin namin ang lahat ng mga kaya para mapababa ang presyo ng pagkain, lalo na para sa mga mahihirap. Ngunit umaasa rin po kami sa tulong ng Kongreso. Kailangan namin ng mas maraming kakayahan para masolusyonan ang mataas na presyo ng pagkain. Kung pwede, alisin ang mga limitasyon na pumipigil sa amin para magawa namin ang aming trabaho ng buo at walang balakid. Maraming salamat po.
Mr. Chair, may I just seek clarification? Thank you for that statement, Secretary Kiko. You made mention that the Kadiwa Rice for All program is 5% broken, binibenta at 40 pesos,
25% broken, Mr. Chair.
at 25. Okay, thank you, thank you.
Thank you very much, Honorable Secretary. Magkano na ba ngayon ang presyo sa pandaigdigang kalakalan ng bigas? Ano yan, 5% Vietnam? What is the index price?
Today's data shows na meron ng may 5% broken, sir, no? Thailand may 550, may 580. Sa Vietnam naman, ang pinakamahal, Mr. Chair, is yung DT8 at $700 per ton na.
So
CNF Manila.
wala na yung 500.
Wala nang, halos sa Vietnam, wala nang 500 landed, wala na.
May pumasok budget na bagong at magkano yung presyo? Yung pinaka-latest pumasok sa customs.
Ang declaration pa rin po sa customs, Your Honor, yung latest na pumasok is for December it's 0.49 po. May mga 0.5 pa rin po na
So 500.
500, yes.
Anyway, forward-looking naman yung kay Secretary.
Yes, sir. We'll look into that also, Your Honor, the information coming from the Secretary.
So at this point, I would like, of course, the committee will benefit from the wisdom of its members. We already have 7 lining up to make questions, and may I recognize one of the wisest congressmen, Congressman Horacio Swansea.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I would like to direct my question to the Honorable Secretary Laurel. Ang plano ng committee na ito, super committee na ito, ay ibaba ang presyo ng mga pangunahing bilihin na mga commodities. Isa ito ay ang bigas. According sa iyo, according to your estimate, Mr. Secretary, magkano dapat ibenta ang locally produced rice at saka yung imported rice sa palengke?
Ang problema na just to answer, Mr. Chair, ang locally purchased price natin sa ngayon, ang average price is ng palay for 2024 is 27.45 pesos. So sa 27.45 pesos na average price ng palay, ang presyo ho niyan at 25% broken ay dapat sa retail should be maximum 48.57 pesos per kilo.
Yung sa imported rice, Mr.
Yung sa
Secretary.
imported naman, Mr. Chair, at the price of at the price of 550, dapat dyan, retail 42 pesos, Mr. Chair.
So, base sa data na binigay mo, Mr. Secretary, makikita dito sa committee na ito na masyadong malaki ang profit margin ng mga retailers. Kasi according sa iyo, dapat mga 48 lang or 45 to 48 pesos ang presyo ng bigas. Binebenta nila ngayon sa palengke, according sa survey namin, mga 55 to 60 pesos. So, ang tanong, Mr. Secretary, meron bang authority ang DA na i-monitor at i-apprehend ang mga nag-overprice ng bigas?
Mr. Chair, sa ngayon nagmo-monitor kami at we agree with the figures na sinasabi ninyo na ang tingin ko dapat ang presyo ng bigas ngayon is from 42 to 49 max na yun, o 48.50. I agree with Mr. Chair na bakit may 50 pa hanggang 60. Hindi na tama yun eh. Unfortunately, wala kaming powers to catch anybody sa merkado dahil wala kaming enforcement for that, Mr. Chair.
Tinanong ko po yon, Mr. Chair, kasi ang focus kasi ng mga taong bayan ay sinisisi ang DA. Akala nila na ang NFA pa rin ang may power to monitor all the retail prices sa palengke. Yun pala, according sa mga conversation natin kanina, ang power pala to enforce the retail prices or monitor and enforce yung tamang presyo ay ang DTI. So ang tanong dito, Mr. Chair, ano ang ginagawa ng DTI para makontrol ang retail prices ng bigas sa palengke? May I solicit an answer from the representative of DTI?
Mr. Chair, malinaw po sa Price Act na pagdating po sa presyo, may 3 pong implementing agency. Sa DA po, Agri. Ang DTI po yung mga tinatawag natin na manufactured, basic necessities and prime commodities. DOH po sa gamot. So pagdating po sa enforcement, meron po talaga kaming enforcement power, pero only for those that are under our jurisdiction, which are yung manufactured BNPCs nga po, katulad po ng sardinas, instant noodles, kape, asin, ayan mga bagay na yan, Mr. Chair.
Ang ibig sabihin, Mr. Chair, yung bigas ay hindi hawak, hindi kontrolado ng DTI? Sino ngayon ang nagkokontrol ng presyo ng bigas sa palengke? Mr. Secretary.
Mr. Chair, yung tungkol sa Price Act na nabanggit ng ating colleague from the DTI, it can only be triggered if there is a spike of more than 10% from the previous month. Unfortunately, walang ganong pangyayari. So wala rin, while that tool is available to us, but there are rules in order to activate that rule. And pangalawa, may problema sa funding nun. Wala ring funding yun. Even if we are able to legally activate it, wala ring pondo, Mr. Chair.
Nabanggit mo kanina, Mr. Secretary, na upon the implementation of the RTL in 2019, nawalan ng power ang NFA. Sa tingin mo, kailangan ba natin ayusin o ibalik ang dating power ng NFA para sa procurement at sa pagkontrol ng mga presyo ng bigas sa palengke?
Mr. Chair, I believe if we want to control the situation, mas magandang maibalik lahat ng powers ng NFA. It just has to be managed properly by honest people, Mr. Chair.
So, ibig sabihin, nirekomenda mo dito sa Super Committee, Mr. Secretary, na pag-aralan namin kung paano natin i-enhance ang power ng NFA kagaya ng dati.
Yes, Mr. Chair. I think that is the most important and that will solve, assuming meron tayong final formula at meron kayong bagong batas na ilalabas tungkol dyan, that will solve the problems moving forward for many years, Mr. Chair.
Pupunta ako sa sources ng palay dito sa Pilipinas. Sa supply ng palay, Mr. Secretary, ilan ang locally produced na palay at saka imported na rice? More or less, Mr. Chair.
Computin mo. Alam ko yung sa rice, ano. Ilan tons? The 78% of our rice is we produce locally. It's about 13 million tons. Ang requirement natin na total almost 16 million per year tons of rice.
So, ibig sabihin, Mr. Secretary, 3 million tons lang ang inaangkat natin as imported rice.
I believe we need, sorry. Sorry, Mr. Chair, calculator lang. Dali. We need 3.8 million tons per year.
So, round off natin, Mr. Chair. So, around 4 million tons ang kailangan natin iangkat every year.
Plus buffer stock, Mr. Chair. So, 10% more, 4.5 to 4.7 tingin ko ang kailangan natin, Mr. Chair.
Palagi nila sinisisi ang smuggling as the source ng isa sa mga problema sa bigas. Sa tingin mo, Mr. Secretary, Mr. Chair, meron pa bang smuggling of rice sa Pilipinas ngayon?
Mr. Chair, I would state that pag-upo ko last year, medyo marami pa. Sa ngayon, tingin ko most of it has been solved. But of course, meron pa rin baka pa-konti-konti dyan. But large-scale smuggling, I can honestly say na halos wala na yung large-scale, Mr. Chair.
Dapat lang, Mr. Chair, kasi yung tariff duty binaba na ni Presidente from 35 nagiging 15. Tapos anybody can import rice. So siguro wala na rason para mag-smuggling. Sa punto na 70% ang locally produced rice,
78, Mr. Chair.
78%. Ano kayang cost kung bakit mataas pa rin yung cost of production, Mr. Secretary?
Well, ang cost of production, basically the main problem is fertilizer. Kung titignan natin ang seed procurement natin or seed prices, the seed prices over the last 5 years, hindi naman tumaas eh. Halos hindi gumalaw for hybrid. Yung inbred, nagtaas kami ng konti lang this year, but very minimal. It's the fertilizer talaga, Mr. Chair, ang problema. Noong 2021, ang presyo ng fertilizer is only 700 pesos per bag. Umabot siya ng 3,000 pesos per bag nung height of the initial year of the Ukraine war, especially in the second year. Ngayon bumaba na to 1,500, pero it's still double than what it was in 2020. More than double than what it was in 2021, Mr. Chair.
Wala ba tayong pwede gawin na intervention para bumaba yung presyo ng fertilizer, Mr. Chair?
Well, one is to produce our own compost, no? At meron nga tayong programa sa ating DSWM, sponsored by Senator Cynthia Villar sa composting machines. So, malaki yung budget doon and we want to operationalize this, bibigay sa farmers in an effective way para magamit talaga, and it should bring down, it should help with the cost of fertilizers, Mr. Chair.
Yung Kadiwa stores nyo, Mr. Secretary, isa sa mga laudable activities na ginawa ng DA. Pero sa tingin namin kasi, kukunti pa lang. Kaya ba ng DA na lagyan ng Kadiwa stores ang bawat munisipyo dito sa Pilipinas?
Yes, sir. Kaya. We just need time and we need the funds to do it. The main challenge of the Kadiwa is not the supply. We have enough supply of rice, local and imported. The main challenge is the logistics cost and ang main challenge. But meron nang binigay si Pangulo sa amin na 5 billion pesos. For 1.5 of which 1.5 billion pesos will be used for the P29 in 29 peso rice for the disadvantaged. Then the 3 billion will be used for the rice for all para i-launch namin nationwide yan to sell at 40 pesos and hopefully 39 pesos per kilo. And the 500 million will be used for rehabilitation of warehouses and for logistics. So that the funds is not coming to us very soon, and yung parang policy guideline on how to use it, Mr. Chair. Thank you.
Mr. Chair, nakakatuwa to si Secretary Kiko kasi may plano siya para ibaba talaga yung presyo. Kasi pag binaba mo yan sa kadiwa ng 40 pesos, lahat na mamimili ng bigas pupunta dyan. So mapipwersa ngayon ng mga retailers na ito na magkukumpit sa presyo. So siguro bababa na rin yan ang presyo sa palengke. Ang tanong ko lang, last question, Mr. Chair. I came from the district of Sultan Kudarat. Puro bundok kasi ang distrito ko. Ang mga tinatanim nila na bigas, yung tinatawag na sahod ulan, once a year. May programa ba yung DA para dyan?
Mr. Chair, definitely marami pa tayong lupa na pwedeng taniman ng bigas na may 3% slope or higher. So yung nga yun, ang problema doon is it is unirrigated. So kung ma-irrigate natin yon, especially with drip irrigation, even for rice, I think we can do double cropping. And ang estimated na total area ng upland area na hindi pa natin natataniman o hindi na masyadong nagagamit or underutilized nga is about another 1 million hectares. So malaking bagay yun, Mr. Chair. So we plan, meron tayong mga pilot project to put solar irrigation doon sa mga lugar na yon. Para and one of the targets is we will be putting 300 million for 2025 sa rice terraces area natin sa Banawe. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I will reserve my other questions sa second round. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Mr. Chair, may I just briefly interject, ano? Mr. Secretary, kasi very perennial na, no, yung ako sa experience ko 6 years,